Hello again, and welcome back to Sheltered Sages, the podcast where two formerly sheltered homeschoolers talk about the complexities of life, one Reddit story at a time. My name is Philip.
And I'm Andrew. Well done, sir. All right. Well,
we're back again. This is part 2 of a episode that came out last week. Basically, we're wearing the same clothing and we're in the same kind of setting because we just continued recording, but we wanted to break it down because it was getting really long. But if you haven't listened to part 1 of this homeschooling episode, go back, listen to part 1, get our soapbox things, get irate as we are.
We talk about it a lot. And the reason we're talking about that is because we are continuing to cover homeschooling.
Yeah.
Because this is why our show exists in the first place. And this
Absolutely.
is why we did it. And so we talk about some really deep stuff, honestly, in my opinion. There are some really heavy topics in that first book. We go into a lot of just like the opinions of people regarding homeschooling and the opinions of public school versus private school and things like that. And I will most likely be referencing that episode in this episode. Yeah. So please go back and listen to the first episode, or the part 1, I should say, in order to understand the full context.
Absolutely.
So I think without further ado, they've been waiting for a whole week for this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's start the episode now.
Are you ready for my first story?
Let's hear it.
Okay.
Well, technically your third story now, because this is the part 2.
Story.
Yep.
Thank you for calling that out. Okay. Am I the picklefoot for refusing to let my sister-in-law use our homeschool materials? And they put homeschool in quotation marks there.
I'm skeptical of the title. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's delve into it.
Gotcha. My family and I are lucky enough to live in a fairly rural area. One of the few disadvantages of living in a rural area, however, is that there are not any preschool options until a child is 5 and can enter a lottery for a place in the one ran by the local public school. Okay. Our twins are 4, and while we would not push academics at this age, they have shown interest in reading and math, and it seems disrespectful to them to put off lessons. I put homeschool in quotations because at our children's age, we are not officially homeschooling. We follow a Montessori-based parenting philosophy, so it made sense for us to also use the Montessori method for these early academics. Now, I want to pause for a little bit and explain what the Montessori method is.
I was going to ask you because I'm not familiar with that, so thank you for pausing. I was going to be like, okay, I'm going to Google while you're talking.
For a lot of people who are wondering, I took this from Wikipedia. And it was, the Montessori method of education is a type of educational method that involves children's natural interest in activities rather than formal teaching methods. Okay. So basically, in that idea is they assume all children want to learn and they want to explore through their learning. Yep. So instead of having tests and books and things like that, they allow the kids to kind of have a open area where they can explore those topics. If they want to learn math, then yes, the parents can go over and show them what these math things are. If they want to learn science, maybe they'll point at a fish and be like, what's that? How does that work? And then they'll go over and kind of teach them.
Okay, so that's cool because that I didn't know what the term for it was, but that was actually how my mom approached us learning history and learning science. So it was very cool because it was like even the system that we utilized encouraged that method where it was like for your students who are this kind of learners, encourage them to do like this is their homework assignment. For the kids who are hands-on learners, have them bake a cake and do this thing and like build a pyramid using like a cake bake. And then like for your creative, like for the storytellers and things like that, have them write a story based on this time period. And it's like it's a really cool methodology.
It's pretty neat. Yeah.
So
some people disagree with it because they're like, okay, you need to have more structure and stuff. It's a more less structured thing, but it's there.
It can still be structured. Yeah. But anyways, I'll finish the story. I'm sorry, sir.
No, you're good. We follow a Montessori-based parenting philosophy, so it made sense for us to also use the Montessori method for these early academics. There are a lot of lovely material used in the Montessori method, and to be frank, they are not cheap. Some are easy and inexpensive to DIY, but others are not. My nephew is 7, and his school is currently doing distance learning. To be blunt, this method does not suit him. According to my sister-in-law, the school has all but officially stated that he is going to be held back for a year. She is livid and determined not to let that happen. She has demanded the use of our materials. My husband and I said no for several reasons. 1, our children are regularly using the beads, which would be of most use to our nephew. So in Montessori method as well, which my parents use a little bit, they're like these beads that are broken down to like one small things. I think they're like magnetic potentially as well. They kind of connect into, so you can make 10 of them, and then you can put them into larger blocks of it.
Okay.
So it helps you with counting and math, because you can say, okay, there's these 10 beads, and then I put 10 beads with 10 beads, so now there's 20.
We did
You can
something
count them.
similar. It was called like Math UC or something like that, with like blocks that we used, which was
I
really
had
cool.
the blocks, yes.
Yeah, those are cool.
So 1, they had the beads. 2, our nephew is rough on things, and my sister-in-law is not the best about repairing or replacing them. 3, there is talk about the local elementary school being closed and consolidated into one country elementary. Our kids would have to travel over an hour to school each day if that happens, so we may end up actually homeschooling. If so, we don't want to have to replace these materials. Our family is very torn by the issue. Some say we are being selfish and teaching our children to be selfish. Others say we are right and should not cave to her demands. My issue is that, no, I don't want to reward her bad behavior, but I also don't want to punish him, the son, for it. I have no clue if more hands-on materials would help him. I do know that if he fails and we didn't loan them to him, that not only would I always question the result, but his mom would never let it die. My husband is a firm no, and I think I'm too torn to pick a side. So, Reddit, or the Sheltered Sages, am I the picklefoot?
See, that's a very familiar and yet very complicated situation.
Yes.
So, distance learning. When was this first? Was this during COVID?
Let me check. It was 4 years ago, so yeah, around COVID time.
Which makes sense for the being shut down. I was like, it
Yeah.
sounds right for the distance learning. That's the hard part, right? Because at 7, you're already struggling to probably pay attention to things, and being in a distant learning, that is such a disadvantage to be at. The what is automatically leaning me away from being the picklefoot, or if she being in the picklefoot at all, is this demand.
Yeah.
Like your sister-in-law does not have the right to anything that you're actively using, regardless of if she has asked for it, demanded it. But that word demand really sets me the wrong way.
Yeah, and we're assuming that OP is saying it correctly. We're assuming that, they're not lying in any way. So they demanded it.
Yeah, so that's the idea. So if it was a legitimate, you need to give me these materials so that my child can succeed in school, that's not good. Here's something that I'm going to talk about. Okay. And this is going to be just more about this could be a hot topic.
Okay.
This is about a comment on parents' involvement in their children's education in a public school setting. So, one of the things that I have learned a lot as I have continued to just work with kids throughout this entire past year and things like that, is that there are 2 kinds of parents when it comes to how their children are doing in school. There are the parents who are actively on top of their kids' homework assignments. They're checking their grades through the portals and many options available to siege their children's grades throughout the semester, things like that, and keeping on top of them for assignments, homework projects, things like that. Then there are the kind of parents who wait for the report card. This, I understand there are multiple reasons for it. However, you cannot wait until your child is at the point of failing to start figuring it out and start trying to fix things. I don't know exactly when this is in the school year. I don't know these other things. But if we're at the point where her 7-year-old is almost failing school, there were probably a lot of warning signs and a lot of messages from teachers, because most teachers that I know, good and even whether they be in public school or private school, are communicating with their parents when assignments are missing, when things aren't being done, when all these other kind of things are happening. But it's like, it's the mentality of the, hey, I know I'm failing this class. Can I get extra credit? And it's like, you missed 17 assignments that you did not fill in. Where are those assignments? And it's like, well, I just need extra credit. Well, how much extra credit do I need in order to pass the class? And it's like, that's not how this works. And obviously this is a 7-year-old, so that's a different situation.
Absolutely.
But like, it's this mentality of waiting until the last minute to try and fix it all versus actively working on it throughout the year.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And then building into what we said last episode, specifically my soapbox about education and public school systems and things like that, there is this whole idea that has come forth where it's like school is less about education, which I think it specifically should be about education because it's an educational system. It's more about having a place for your kid to be for a certain amount of time so that they can be social with other individuals, maybe learn some concepts and things like that. But basically, if the kid just shows up and they do the bare minimum, they will pass their grade and go to the next one. While I understand that as a concept, and I'm not completely against that, I think it is so warped in the way that we're thinking of these things that it makes it more difficult. That said, yes, it's uncomfortable if you are pushed back a grade. Like if you're older than all the rest of the kids that are around you, it's not necessarily like comfortable for you in a social setting. That said, you're at school to learn. You're not at school necessarily to socialize or to have fun with other people or to just be away from your parents, at least how it's supposed to be built out. And so you're supposed to be focused on making sure you do what you need. For this mom, it seems like she's more frustrated that he's going to be held back than that the kid isn't learning what he needs to learn at this age. I don't feel like that is the worst thing. As I said before, people learn in different ways. People sometimes learn at different speeds. I don't think it's bad if maybe you are, let's say, behind from other people because it might take you a little bit longer to learn certain math concepts or something. As long as you get it eventually, that's fantastic. And if there is a different system that is better for you to be learning these things, that is good. If you're just pushing because you need to be up with the rest of the kids or up with around the other people.
People will talk about it if my son is held back a grade.
It's kind of difficult. To that mom's credit and to like what you're saying before where you need to be more involved in their schooling, you need to be involved in their things like that. Parenting is hard.
Oh, absolutely.
I am not a parent. I have not had to deal with it, but talking to other parents who are out there, it is hard to make sure that your kids are learning what they need to and that they're getting what they want and that they're like they have the nutrients that they need. They have the socialization, that your kid stays alive, let alone is able to
keep the child alive.
It is difficult. And so like I do not envy them at all. And I kind of feel in the sister-in-law's like kind of the way that they're talking about her, she's desperate.
Yeah.
She's like, my kid is being put behind. Potentially, like you were saying too, the world is in a pandemic and we're trying to make sure that this kid is going to go back to school at the end of all of these things, not behind, not pushed back in any way, but it doesn't seem like it's working for them. Yeah. And so she's like, you have kind of like the Mandalorian style. You have what I need. I'm going to need you to give it to me.
Carlo Espinosa. I love that, so man. Good. He is so good.
While I don't I appreciate the way that she's pushing for it, I do respect that she wants her kid to be successful and is going to do what she feels it takes to make sure that kid is successful.
That's the hard part with these things, is it's like, I appreciate that you're wanting to get the work done and try and make up for it. Number one, it is not your sister-in-law's problem, the one you're asking to borrow these materials from, your brother and your sister-in-law, that they have to fix. And I'm not familiar with like the direct schooling materials for that system that they're utilizing, but I'm imagining it's something that can be used all throughout the early learning stages, whether it be preschool, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and so on.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you're like, I don't want to lend you something I'm actively using, especially if your child does not treat things correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other side of this. I, even just like working the after school, on Fridays, I used to actually bring my Switch in, and I used to like hook it up for the middle schoolers. Like I'd used to hook it up. I'd bring like Mario Kart, Mario Party, Smash Bros, things like that. Something fun that they can play in their room. I got the owner's permission to be able to do that. I stopped bringing it in because I started seeing the kids like slamming the controllers down on things, or they didn't do it with my controller, thank goodness, but I saw them throw a remote for one of the TVs across the room when they were mad at something. And I'm just like, I don't feel comfortable. And one of the kids asked me, he's like, well, when are you going to bring it back? And I'm like, unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I feel like you guys are going to treat it with respect.
Yeah.
Because this is something that's important to me. This is something that I spent money on. And respectfully, none of you guys are going to be able to replace it. And I would have to contact your parents to replace it. And that's not fair to your parents either. And so I'd rather not bring it. And so it's that mentality of like, if this is something I'm going to be using and this is something that's important to me, I don't want to give it to someone who's not going to respect it. And just, again, the sister-in-law is giving me the ick. I think that's just what it is. It's just like, I just don't like people demanding other things from me.
My final thing before we get into the comments
you need to get into the comments.
Yeah, I'll get to the comments then. She can buy, the top comment here, they're saying that the OP is not the picklefoot.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
She can buy or make the stuff herself.
Yeah.
And if she can't afford to, then the people giving you complications over being selfish can open up their own wallets to help her. Your kids are using the stuff regularly, not the picklefoot. And then somebody responded to that, this OP. Don't send the items you personally have. Send them where they can get or how to make their own.
Yes.
That way, if they break, it's on her. Also, not the picklefoot. And then to that, what I wanted to say is, homeschool isn't cheap, especially when you're looking into materials in that way. Like,
unless you're
go ahead.
And if you're in the state of Florida, there's a lot of things actually that are now in place that help homeschoolers cover the cost for a lot of things. It's actually really cool. There's a lot There's a lot of stuff that's set up to help. Like one of my families that takes martial arts, or like that comes to my Monday night class, the class that you're in, actually like pays for it through this grant from the government.
That's cool.
For physical activity exercises and activities and things of that nature. Because it is PE in a sense, like, and they're using it for that purpose. So I know there's a lot of resources that are more available now to it. But continue, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. My parents, when we were growing up, especially when we got to the point where we could read and we were reading a lot more books, they spent, I'm pretty sure, thousands of dollars on just all of these various books for our curriculum. It helped out that we were able to use those books over and over again for each of us as we went through. But still, it was like a upfront cost where we had to get those things, especially with like the blocks that we went through, like we talked about before, where you have these things that could help you count and do math and things like that.
Multiplication and things.
Those cost a lot. And I'll say, I'm sorry to my parents. I did break a lot of those blocks just because I was like, how can you take them apart and stuff? I was a little more destructive child. But they cost a lot, right? Those materials are expensive. So while some people are like, yeah, just give them over. You're not using them, or we can share. It's like, no, it's very, very expensive. I appreciate it later on, especially when we were kind of past the stage where we needed those materials. My parents actually started giving those materials over to other homeschool parents to support them, because once again, it's a lot of money. Books are expensive. Textbooks are expensive. All these things, like if you go to a public school or a college, a lot of those educational like books and materials are hundreds of dollars per book. So if you have to get a book for each and every one of your kids, depending on how many there are, it's going to cost a lot. For someone to say, I deserve your materials. I need those materials because my kid is behind. It's like, I spent the time and money to research what I needed, to purchase those materials, and to set them up for my kids so they could be successful.
Yeah.
If this sister-in-law isn't willing to do so, that's not on OP. Yeah. And like, while, you know, you might want to talk to them a little bit about like, hey, honestly, they don't need to do anything for the sister-in-law.
No, absolutely not.
If she wants to buy them, send them the link. Be like, yeah, it's right over here. It's about, you know, $500 for these beads. Buy them on your own. Or if you really care that much. Yeah.
I was like, or here's a link to these magnetic beads where you can put them all together and make it yourself if you need to. Like, I like that someone talked about the DIY aspect of it, because it's like, realistically, you're going to be DIYing a lot of things in your homeschool thing, because why do I want to spend X amount of money on a specific curriculum when like I could make something similar myself?
Yeah.
Like flashcards. Like, why would I need to spend $100 on a set of math flashcards when I could make those at home on index cards and laminate them, and it probably be closer to like $20. You know, it's like there are options available to you, and that's something you learn as you do homeschooling, that there is options available. There's also used bookstores. There are also, I can't remember what it was that my mom used to do, but pretty much every year she would go, there was like this one place, and it was pretty much like all of the homeschool people would come together, and it would be like a used book sale. Like they would sell their old curriculum that they had, and they could like, and it was so cool because people could come and they could talk to the people who taught with it, and like shop around for different curriculums and things that they wanted to do and things like that. So it was really cool.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah. So it's a really cool, like, and it's a way to build the community. But again, that's obviously a little bit more above what this story is talking about. But the sister-in-law, and that's the other thing too, is it's like, has the sister-in-law talked to the school about what resources they have available to help?
Probably not.
Possibly.
She probably just yelled at them saying, why is my kid behind? They're like, because he doesn't know how to count.
It's just, the reality is that you have to figure things out. And are you always going to go to your in-laws to bail you out? Are you always going to be comparing? Like, that's the other thing. It's like you're comparing their 4-year-olds and what they're using to your 7-year-old. Maybe your 7-year-old doesn't need that. Yeah. Maybe they're not that kind of learner. Maybe they're not going to be the ones that are going to be able to effectively utilize those resources. Yes. Like, it's very clear that the parents have been actively following that system throughout their early childhood. Is the sister-in-law doing that? Or is the sister-in-law utilizing other resources and then just trying to supplement it with this thing because that's what they're seeing is working for their sister?
Yeah. And to that point, what I wanted to end on this kind of thing on, you can say something afterwards if you want to, but it's like, while materials are important and are very, very helpful towards it. My parents got one of the top math teaching curriculum in the world. It wasn't teaching textbooks. It was,
I'm curious.
I think it's Singapore math.
Oh, I've heard of Singapore math.
Yeah, because they had like the top ratings of math education in the world. So they're like, we're going to do Singapore math. Yeah. It's super helpful in the way that you teach the kids, but it's also who and how you're teaching the kids.
Yeah,
it seems like these parents, OP and her husband, are working really hard to make sure that the kids have a positive atmosphere, have the materials, and are ready to be able to educate them in the way that they need. That goes so much further than anything, whether you have blocks or beads or the best textbooks in the world. If you have parents that are willing to slow down and to educate them and be patient. Yeah. Patience is hard, especially with kids that are small there, and you're like, okay, what's 2 + 3? And they're like 7. You're like, 2 + 3. Yeah. Just
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, exactly.
7.
And you're just like, I appreciate my parents because I was that kid. I was the kid who would just come up with, and they're like, you're just coming up with numbers. I'm like, yeah, honestly, I'm just coming up with numbers. So being patient and ready and willing to listen, understand what they're having troubles with, and then really focusing on that is super, super important. And I think that will go further than any materials, any curriculum, and anything like that. It's just being patient with your kids. Again, it's hard to do. Yeah. But like if you do it, it'll be positive.
And that's where I think it comes down to a lot too, is we've circled back to the parental involvement, right? Like I talked about at the beginning, they're the parents who are actively investing in their children's education, checking where they're at, helping them with homework, things like that.
Yeah.
And then there are the parents who are not involved in any capacity and are just waiting for the report card. And so it's like, you are responsible for being involved in your children's life.
Yep.
It's very much, we're having a big upsurge, I think, in this day and age of like the baby boomer are like, their children are not interacting with them because they did not take an active participation in their life growing up.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the effects of that as we understand more and more of like the human psyche and more about like relationships, and people become more in tune with their mental health and like setting boundaries and learning about all of this vocabulary and things like that. Obviously, people take it to extremes sometimes. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's very evident that like a lot of people go with the mentality of like, well, I put food on the table, I made sure you had a roof over your head, I made sure that you went to school and that you got to do sports. Like, obviously the sports is above and beyond, but like food, roof over your head, place to sleep, those are the bare minimum expectations of bringing a child into this world.
Yeah.
You're not a super, like, and again, preface this with, I am not a parent. I am not in any capacity, and I have huge respect for people who are. I'm moving in the direction of being a parent, but I have a huge respect, and I know it is a difficult job.
Yeah.
That being said, you are not a good or a great parent because you fulfilled those 3 requirements. That is the bare minimum expectation. So, all that being said, these parents who are actively involved in their children, learning how they develop and grow and actively doing it, they are showing that they're actively involved in their life. And that's like a good homeschooling parent is actively involved in their children's development.
Yeah.
There are bad homeschooling parents who are just like, you're going to go do online school only, and I'm not going to check up on you or follow up with you or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's it. And it's like, that's not good homeschooling either, but that's the same whether they're physically in school or not. So again, regarding this sister-in-law, I question her involvement in the child's education, and that these resources are not going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
If you're not involved.
Yeah. And I will put on top of everything, for those parents who might be having difficulty with their kid and their education, just because your kid is having difficulty in their expectation, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault. You could be working your hardest to make sure that they get everything that they need, and they could still be falling behind. It happens. Yeah. And that's why I give that it's a difficult job. It's a difficult option, but putting your best foot forward, being involved in your kids' education, understanding the parts where they're falling behind, understanding the things that they kind of need help with, and then looking into resources that might help early on before it becomes a huge problem is super, super important.
Yeah. If you're finding that your child is struggling with reading to like above the normal expectation, go get them tested to see if they have dyslexia.
Yeah.
If you're noticing that your child is having difficulty paying attention and is easily distracted and is not following the things, get them tested for ADHD. I mean this in the genuinest way, because even though I was able to be successful as a student, had I had that resource available to me, I think I would have done so much more. Yeah. And I think that's one of those things that it's like, don't assume it's a failure on your part if something is happening. Recognize that we are all different with our own special needs and our own requirements.
Yeah. And what I want to say as well is there are certain situations, especially when you have a 2 working parent household, where you can't homeschool. Yeah, it's just, absolutely. It's not going to work with your financial situation, things like that. My family was very blessed to have a situation where my mom could stay home with us and educate us. And I am very, very appreciative of that. But I also respect the families who both the parents or are out working, or you only have a 1-parent household that are there, or one guardian household that is going out there getting money for the people and coming back. And so they're doing their best. They're trying to look into it, but they're really depending on those other situations and institutions to kind of help those kids grow and become different. For those people who are out there and like, I just don't have the time or energy, completely respect it. I seriously do. Again, I'm not a parent. All we're kind of saying here is that it is important if you see something like that happening, if you see them starting to slip, at least putting in a bit of effort towards looking into those options. If you see something's going on, take a little bit of time off of work, go talk to their teachers. Maybe the teachers aren't doing what they need to do.
That is true.
Sometimes it happens.
Especially in public schools.
Yeah.
I heard of this was from a friend of mine who is now homeschooling their daughters, actually. And they were talking about how one of their daughters was going to a school, and this teacher had been pulled out of retirement to teach and was genuine. Like, they had all of these systems in place because their daughter struggles with attention.
Yeah.
And they had all these systems. Teacher was not communicating and was just disciplining the daughter over and over and over again. Even though they had all these systems in place, she was not following the guide. She was not following the instructions of the school district, of the Department of Education. She was doing her own thing. And it's like, probably because it was one of those older, it's like, well, it's been doing this so long in my day and blah, 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 blah. But it's just the reality.
The way it works. Yeah.
It's just the reality that sometimes, like, just because they're teachers doesn't mean they have everything together. And I mean this, and I know it's hard.
Yeah.
And I mean this in the nicest way possible. It can take as little as 5 minutes. It could be a phone call.
Yeah.
You can be driving to work. It could be a phone call. It can be an email.
Yeah.
It can be take that time.
Put the effort in.
I know it's hard, and especially like you said, and I think that's the single parent households.
Yeah.
And honestly, thinking about the story, we don't hear anything about the sister-in-law's husband.
We don't.
This could be a single parent household.
Yeah.
So I'll acknowledge that that's a lot of work.
Yes.
I'm not leaning in that direction just because they're trying to get homeschooling materials to make all of this work.
Yes.
But all that to be said, it's like I totally respect you for being able to continue that path and continue to parent and be there for your children, but also recognize that there are choices that you have to make.
Yeah.
And that 5 minutes could mean, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, checking in with your child, checking over their homework.
Yeah.
It can do wonders over the long period of time.
I like that.
So, all right. Anything else from that story?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more for you.
Ooh, one more
And this
story.
is-
The last story of this semester
Yep.
of Sheltered Sages.
Yep. Are you ready for it?
I am ready. Let's go. I want to add in there, before we hop into this next story, I want to let you know this story has a little bit of violence within school in there. So if you don't want to listen to that, that's okay. We're going to tell you again once it comes up in the story, but just letting you know this has a little bit of that in there.
Yep. Okay. Am I the picklefoot for sending my son to private school and homeschooling my daughter? Yep.
We'll see.
Yep. I'm trying to keep this short, so let me know if you need me to elaborate. I, 41 female, have 4 kids, but only 2 figure into this situation. I will give them fake names. Tiana, 15 female, and Jacob, 16 male. Jacob is a bio kid, while Tiana was adopted when she was in 1st grade. I think my family has done a great job of not making a distinction between the bio and adopted kids, but it's relevant later, so I'm adding this information. The high schools in our town are terrible and full of drugs and general sketchiness. My son Jacob is very intelligent and earned a half scholarship to a STEM academy in the next town over. The 50% we have to pay for is expensive, but my husband and I decided it was worth it. My 2 younger kids aren't in high school yet, and Tiana is homeschooled. She is a hard worker, but not very academically gifted. Her strengths lie more in her people skills and musical talent. Well, Tiana has started asking to go to school in person this fall and stop being homeschooled. She gets lonely at home, and I've suggested we join a co-op, but she doesn't want to get up early to go. I want that to be said. This is Andrew above the story. I want that to be pointed because I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to get up early to go. That is her reasoning for not wanting to join the co-op.
Okay.
I told her going to public high school was a hard no, and I reminded her that public school would also make her get up early. She is now pushing to go to a Christian school in our neighborhood, a private Christian school in our neighborhood. It is very expensive and we can't afford it, but our part of Jacob's tuition would cover it. She thinks we should take Jacob out of the STEM academy and let her go. I told her that wasn't a fair solution, and she started acting up. She said we didn't love her because she's adopted, a blatant lie, and we think she's too stupid to succeed. She's picking on Jacob now, and they are not on speaking terms. My husband thinks we should just pull Jacob out of the STEM Academy, sell our second car, and send both Tiana and Jacob to the Christian high school. I think killing Jacob's future because Tiana is feeling spiteful is the wrong response. Am I the picklefoot? So there is an edit to the story, so I want to make sure I edit that.
Yeah.
I'm getting mixed answers here, so I thought I'd add some info. 1, yes, all my kids went/go to public elementary and middle school. So take that into consideration. 2, yes, the high schools are really that bad. I'm going to preface this with a, serious warning. A kid got stabbed in the parking lot on the first day back to school.
Oh,
if that adds context. That is terrible.
Okay.
Tiana and my daughter, Helen, are both black/biracial, and the rest are white. I try to protect my daughters from discrimination. I'm a mama bear when I need to be, but I'm sure I have blind spots. Number 4, my mom started declining a few years ago after a traumatic burglary that ended in her falling and getting hurt. I've been her caregiver ever since, and it's tough for us to move house. I'm sure that's people talking about well, you just need to move to a different school district or things like that. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
I laughed because I think it's hilarious how they went. She is saying that we are differentiating between them because one is a biological child versus one is not, a total lie, and that she's not smart enough to succeed. Moves on to the next sentence. That's where I get frustrated because, yes, they're basically saying that she's not smart enough to succeed. They put her in homeschool because they said she's not as academically gifted. She's not really what she needs to be at and this kind of thing. Versus this guy who is quite smart. He's in the STEM Academy. He's doing all the things that he needs to do and things like that. I agree objectively. If one kid is doing far better in school than the other kid is doing, it makes sense logically to spend more on one child's education that is doing better at it versus the other child who may not be doing as well. That said, it is not your choice as a parent to get to decide, really, which child you will fully support in their education based off of how gifted you think each of them are. Because like I kept saying in the previous part 1 of this and in this one, everyone learns in different ways and may learn better in different atmospheres. While this daughter may not be as good in the situation that she's in. Now, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to the daughter. Maybe she'll go over to this new school and she'll really love it so much that she'll start doing her homework. She'll start actually learning a lot more because she wants to fit in. I have seen kids that have done that before when they're by themselves or even in homeschool, they kind of just slack off because they're like, I don't really care. It doesn't mean anything. It takes a social situation for them to actually go, oh, if I can't read, people make fun of me. So I'm going to learn how to read now. Or if I can't do math, I'm not going to be able to fit in with these other friends that are over here, so I'm going to do that. I don't think it's the best way to be forced to learn. It's kind of toxic. It's like being peer pressured into getting an education.
It's kind of an antithesis of our first point about how you shouldn't be pressured into making decisions or choosing things because society tells you to. But also, some expectations are there for a reason. Exactly. Maybe if you are not putting on deodorant and someone makes a comment about it, you're going to start putting on deodorant. Yeah. It's kind of that mentality. It's hard that it's gotten to that point, but sometimes that's the decision that it gets to.
Yes. And so I still feel with the story, it is just overall, I understand that OP has a reason for doing what she's doing and how she's doing it and doesn't feel like it is wrong. And I can see from her perspective how it would not be wrong. That said, you are paying money for this one kid to go to this very expensive school. So much so that is taking that same amount of money that it would cost for this other kid to go to school away from potentially them doing so. And so I think it is better, instead of going, yeah, this kid's just really not smart, I don't think it's worthwhile, and I think they're kind of lazy and they wouldn't be successful at it. Give them a chance to prove something. Give them a chance to show, okay, I can get up early in the morning and be ready to go. I really want to do this. Give them a chance to get better at their grades and stuff like that. Because kind of like we said with I think the first story where the mom said, I want to homeschool. And the person said, yeah, no, that's kind of silly. You're not really good at what you're doing here. This daughter's like, I want to go to this school because I want to socialize, I get lonely. It's like, okay, well, if you want this, I guess, privilege of going to the school, show me that you're willing to work up to it. Your brother is doing really good on his grades and things like that. That's why we're keeping him in here. If she can't do that, and she's just going to complain and be a little bit frustrating and stuff like that, then that shows you that maybe this is not the best idea. But give her a chance first. Instead of just arguing whether or not it should be or shouldn't be like, hey, do these things. If you do these things, I will be fully willing to sell the car, see if we can get you into school. If she can't, then it's like, it's kind of on you and not on her, our OP.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with this, and I definitely think, that's the hard part for me. Is it's like, I read this, and I recognize that one of the things that is talked about is this, like, I'm having a little bit of issue, and I understand completely. And this might just be because I was in a home with a very different situation. I was in a home with 2 kids with special needs and 2 of us without the special needs. There were a lot of times where I had to recognize that my siblings were going to need additional support when I didn't have it, or going to get additional time or effort where I wasn't. And yeah, I don't love it, I don't appreciate it, but I recognize that's a thing. And so there was a time where I went to a private school by myself. The other 3 were still homeschooled, and I was the only one that went to a private school. I'm going to have to ask my mom the reasoning why. I think it was just she had put in for us to go, and the only spot that opened up was for me in the 2nd grade. And so she was like, well, let's try it. And then we just decided it wasn't the best fit for us. And then same with the charter school. I know that she had put in at the charter school and the 2 slots had opened up. And so one for my brother, one for me. And so we both went. Again, public school was not for me, both socially. I was getting bullied a lot. And on top of all of that, I really struggled with test taking, which was because of the ADHD. But I really struggled with test taking and things like that. My grades were fine. It was just one of those things where it's just like, I just didn't like the environment. Yeah. I've been in that situation where, like, some of my siblings were going to school, some of my siblings weren't. I'm sure my sister will talk to me about this because she listens to all of the episodes. So I'm sure she'll reach out to me and be like, yeah, I was super jealous that you got to go to a public school and I had to stay home. But I think it was the opposite. I think they loved being home alone with mom and getting that individual attention versus like having to go to school. But obviously we're talking about high schoolers here, which is very different from elementary school, which is where we were at. And high schoolers can be a lot. And that's the thing. So the part that I'm struggling with a lot with this story, and I like what you said, though, because she made that comment, which means that something is going on in that household to help her identify that her parents do think she's less academically gifted. So that is something that I'll take into consideration. Yeah. But the thing that I didn't like was the only reason that she was pushing to go to this high school was so she could have social interaction. Yeah. And the mom had a solution prepared for that, which was, let's join the local co-op. And her only excuse against that was, I don't want to wake up early. Yeah. So in comment to your thing, what I think the best solution would be is, okay, let's finish out the year and we'll start going to this co-op. You start making friends, you start interacting with people, see if this fills your social niche that you need. Because as we talked about earlier, again, I don't know where they're located at, so I don't know in terms of like the scale of their co-op, but there's a lot of different things available and a lot of people that you can get to interact with from all ages. And so see if maybe this does help fulfill that social need that you have. And then if you're still feeling that way, then I do think you make a good point about needing to address these two things.
Yeah.
The part that's hard, the son earned this scholarship, which means, and again, this could be two things. It could literally be like he applied for it or he did something to earn it.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be very cautious about taking away from one child in order to make the other child feel special.
Yes. You
and
do.
that's the part where I think, now obviously this gets very complicated when you get into finances and other things of that nature.
I didn't think about that part, but yeah.
But
yeah,
it's
you're
like, as thinking about it from the 16-year-old's perspective, it's like if I had worked so hard and I had gotten this opportunity and my parents said that I could go and we're gonna make it work, and I'm applying myself and I'm trying, to then have my sister, who respectfully has not put in the effort to get to where I am, has not done the things, and is just complaining because I have something that she doesn't, then how does that teach her about the way the real world works?
Yeah.
Because yes, there are some things that happen where people just get lucky, or people, because of how the way they were born, or the nature of things, sometimes have more advantages to them. But you're teaching your daughter that I'm going to punish one child in order to make things even for you. So I don't know. That's the hard part with this one, is it is a little bit more on the complex side.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where it's like a compromise needs to be reached, and there needs to be some analysis as to what you think about your daughter.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you're only basing the worth of your children off of academic success, you're failing your children. But if you recognize that one son is very intellectually gifted and the other one is musically and artistically gifted, you should be fostering those two with the same amount of energy.
Yes, that part.
Because one is not necessarily better than the other.
Yeah.
Societally speaking, one is not better than the other. But so those are just my thoughts regarding that.
Do we have comments on that? And then I have something I want to throw in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, interestingly enough, the decision for this one was she was the picklefoot. Someone says you're the picklefoot. You say yourself that Tiana's strengths lie in music and her people skills. How exactly are those being nurtured during homeschooling? It seems to me that you are blatantly favoring one child over the other. You see Jacob as having more potential, and therefore taking him from the STEM school would kill his future, which is what she said in the story, which I'll acknowledge that. However, you don't seem to care at all that forcing Tiana to be homeschooled, where she almost certainly cannot nurture her strengths to their fullest potential, will also adversely affect her future. Now, pulling Jacob out of school where he's already settled does also feel harsh and unfair, but ultimately, this is your fault for putting him in a private school at the expense of Tiana's to begin with. And I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I have another few comments.
Okay.
Someone says, you're the picklefoot. She needs to go to school. She needs socialization and to get to know her peers. I think killing Tiana's future because you think Jacob is smarter is the wrong response.
I don't fully agree with that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I threw that one in there, because it's like, oh, there's that homeschoolers can't socialize.
Public school idealism.
Someone did respond to that comment. Respond. I tried to say reply and respond at the same. Respond. That's not how I'm interpreting this. I don't think OP is dismissing Tiana's abilities, just recognizing that hers are different and can be met in other ways than an expensive private school. If Tiana wants to socialize, she can go to public school, even if it means getting up early. Does the Christian school not start early too? That's not a really good reason to not go to public school. Also, I'm concerned that the husband wants to sell the second car. It's a family of 6 with 2 active teenagers. They most likely need a second car.
That's fair.
Unless the father works from home.
Thank you, commenter, for thinking about their future and the students needing their vehicles.
Right, which I respect that this person is saying the public school. I would even insert that as the co-op.
Yeah.
There's the co-op, because a lot of people don't know what a co-op is. But
if you're looking for what a co-op is, look at the previous episode.
Previous episode, because we talked about a co-op in the first episode. But like that's what a co-op does, is it
Yes.
gives you those opportunities to socialize. So that's what I would say. I'm like, if you're really focused on wanting to go to this place and do these things, then let's do that. Let's go to the co-op. Show me you're good to get up early. Show me that you can socialize, interact with these people, and then we can decide whether or not we need to move in that direction.
That's fair. I'm going to be a little bit more vulnerable on this thing and kind of give a more context to why I think that OP is slightly a picklefoot. Slight picklefoot, I'll say. When I was growing up, I had a lot of trouble with math. It just didn't connect. I kind of talked a little bit about it during this episode or potentially the last one, but it just didn't connect for me. And for the longest time, my parents, they tried their absolute best to make sure that I could get all the concepts and I'll be able to do it. But I did fall behind in math in a lot of different ways. They did what they could, but it was also just it was more complex for me to understand what the answers were to those problems versus other individuals. For my siblings, it seemed like they were all pretty successful in math. They did what they needed to do and other concepts and stuff. I was pretty good in everything else as well. I was learning and growing and stuff like that. It was just math that set me back. Now, I appreciate my parents in that way of, even though they knew that I was struggling with math, they didn't think of me like, oh, you're stupid, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're a little bit less than the rest of your siblings. They understood that I had a different way of understanding the world and understanding how these concepts were supposed to go. And they spent extra time working with me. I remember my mom would sit right beside me and work through those math problems to make sure I was there. We'd sometimes spend hours just going over, and I cried a lot because, it was difficult for me to try to get those things. But they were patient and they worked through to make sure that I would be able to get those concepts there. Later on, I realized that there were other things that were going on in my brain that made it more difficult for me to understand the answers. It wasn't that I didn't understand the concepts.
The logic behind it.
The answers, to the point that once I actually went over to a middle college where it was like college classes along with like high school classes. As a senior, I was there. I actually tutored people in math.
Wow.
I was able to go over and show them what the concepts were, to the point that the teacher of that class was like, you can go over and teach other individuals this. Even when I went over to chemistry in that same kind of way, those math concepts, those chemistry concepts were easy for me to understand. And later on in college, I realized I am pretty good at understanding math concepts, just not math answers. And so I appreciate my parents, instead of going, you're not smart enough to be able to get this, we're just going to give up on you, you're just a little bit, less understanding of this, you're like, no, we're going to make sure you understand those concepts, we're going to make sure you get those answers, and then hopefully that will stick, because it did. And in that same way of this daughter, I was more artistically inclined. I was more I played piano, I played drums, I like to draw a lot, I want to be a filmmaker. And, while I feel even now, sometimes my parents are like, are you sure you want to go into that? Are you sure this is what you want to do?
Yeah.
They still encouraged me to go in those ways. They put me into art classes. They allowed me to interact with other students and children that were out there that were doing the same thing. They encouraged me to go out and do what I was passionate about. And it helped me grow myself and understand what I liked and what I didn't like, and appreciate those things that maybe I wasn't as good at, like math, a lot more. And so for this story, where I see these two different students there, one student that is really good at the structure of how this education is built out, one student that is doing great in their tests, who is getting the scholarships and stuff like that. My older sister was super good at getting scholarships. I think my younger sisters as well, all of my siblings were really good at getting scholarships for various things. They're very, very educated. It was very difficult for me to do the same thing. And so while I could go, well, maybe this is because I'm not as smart as they are, maybe because, I'm not as valuable as a person as they are. I have come to understand, and with my parents as well, it's like people learn in different ways. People are good at different things. While that son might be really, really good at that stuff, it doesn't discount that the daughter has value in other ways and other things. And as a parent, I feel is super, super important, regardless of what you understand for that child, to care about each and every single one of your kids' futures.
Yeah.
What do you believe that daughter is going to be doing in the future? Sit down, talk to her about it. See what she is passionate about. See what she really wants to do. Pay attention to that, because that goes so much further than any math tests, any educational, any SAT that you could go through, is being like, what do you want to do? Because not everyone's path is the same. Not everyone's educational skills are the same. Some people are going to be different. But everyone is valuable.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I think that's like, it kind of ties in what we talked about with the first part of the episode about, just because you don't finish high school or just because you don't get a college degree doesn't mean you're not intelligent.
Yeah.
It could just mean that you don't jive with the way that the school system is designed.
Yeah.
Just because you can't, I can't remember what, there's a story about it. I think it's like, if you judge a goldfish's ability, or if you judge a goldfish on its ability to climb a rope, it will fail every time.
Yes.
I think it's like, I don't remember the proper,
I
but
think
it's
that's
that
close.
idea. It's like, if you're looking at someone and expecting them based off of the wrong metrics, you're going to fail, which is one of the cool things about homeschooling, is that you get to work with with children, and you get to work with them based on the way that they worked. Like the first story you were talking about, I loved the programs that were literally like, your kids are going to learn differently. Here's the ways that you can challenge them to work within their skill sets. And it like was awesome for me, because it's like, I think back to it, and like Mom actually within the past, like I think past year, she gave me a folder of like all of the writing assignments that I did throughout my year, and I looked and I'm like, some of these are good. So like, I can see now as an adult, I was like, oh, I should have been pursuing this the entire time.
Really
but
should've.
It's like, yeah, I know. But it's one of those things where it's like, we all move at our own paces, and we all figure out things on our own. And, it's one of those things that you do have to kind of recognize each of your children's gifts.
Yeah.
And as you said, push them towards that.
Yeah.
So what is your official opinion?
Official opinion is soft picklefoot.
Soft picklefoot.
Because it feels like OP is not paying as much attention to the daughter as she is towards the son. And so while I think maybe they feel like, I'm trying to be open, even the fact that they decided to go on this subreddit and ask means that they are questioning whether or not they are doing that. And I think that's a first step. I think if you are questioning, maybe I should be paying more attention to my daughter, and maybe I should, then you should. Go in, ask those questions, figure out what they want to do, and have a heart-to-heart of like, I care about you. I appreciate you. I want you to succeed. I don't want you to think that I care about you less than our son, because I don't. But you need to step up and do that. Again, like we keep saying through this entire episode and the past episode, it is hard being a parent. It is super difficult. So I do not envy you in that way, but it is important to, put some effort in. Learn about what your kids are doing. Find out how you can help them be successful.
Yeah.
So soft picklefoot.
Yep. And I agree with you. I think it's one of those things that it's like, I do think it's the wrong side. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the solution is. It is interesting, because I should have done this prior to stream, but I was like, while you're talking, I was looking up the comments, and the OP posted in a few of the comments with some answers to some things. And interestingly, their co-op only meets on Fridays.
Oh.
And it's at early dawn, because the rest of the kids are like farming families. So that's why they meet at early morning.
So it might not be the best situation for the child to go in, especially if they're not in the same kind of social situations as them. So
it's an additional detail that adds a little bit more. Like some co-ops I know only meet on like Tuesdays and Thursdays or other things like that, just because they leave the homeschooling to the other days. But like one time a week for early morning socialization probably not going to meet your daughter's needs either. So it's a hard one.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think soft picklefoot is the answer. Again, I was leaning a little bit more towards not the picklefoot, but the more we talked about it, the more I was able to acknowledge that I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the long scheme of things. That
it really does. But like as we talked about through there, homeschool is not for everyone.
No,
obviously, it's very difficult to do well.
Yeah.
But I feel that if anyone is questioning whether or not they should hop into it or try it with their kids, go look into the resources that are out there. Go look into the things that you can do with it, because it does open up a whole other side of possibilities towards education of your kids. I feel very passionate about homeschool. One side because I was homeschooled and I did enjoy it. I think it was the greatest choice that my parents have made, and it helped me grow and be the person that I am. But on the other side, I think it is another opportunity to really get closer to your kids and understand them in a way that you wouldn't get if you sent them over to public school. And it shows that you really are passionate about it, especially if you're a parent that is able to stay at home with the kids and educate them. I say consider it. Yeah.
And it's something that I look back on with quite fond memories. There are moments where I acknowledge I'm like, because again, as we talked about, like the two siblings that had special needs, that made it really hard for us to go out and do activities. I was heavily involved in my church, so I was like part of the worship team where I got to like learn how to play guitar, things like that, choir, all those other kind of things. So I had that like socialization opportunities. But like I wasn't involved in a lot when I was around high school until I got a car actually and started going to, I did dual enrollment, which is what they call it here in Florida, similar to what it sounds like for there, which is how you get your AA degree in high school. So I was able to do that. And that kind of opened me up to be able to participate in more activities and things like that. But yeah, it's you're very right. It's not for everyone, but also if you put in the effort, anyone can do it.
Absolutely.
That's the thing that I recognize. That's like, because I don't like people who are like, you have to have these certain qualifications to do it. No, there are plenty of resources that are there to help anyone who's wanting to move in that direction and has the means and resources to do it should go that way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that being said,
That's the end of the episode. That is the end of the first semester of Sheltered Sages.
It's exciting. Like we started in February?
Yes.
I think is when we
started out with a crazy idea during a Chili's trip.
A Chili's trip in January.
Turned into a podcast where we talk about the complexities of life, one Reddit story at a time. It's been great to have all of you watch us as we talk through these crazy things.
Yeah.
I will be honest, I didn't think this was going to work as well as it did. I was like, we're going to try it maybe one or two and see. But I truly, it worked. It's really nice.
What I love about it, I think more than anything, is just it's allowed me to look back at my childhood a lot more and start even like pulling back like the fog on memories that I hadn't even remembered, or even just like talking with my family who listened to the episodes. They're like, oh yeah, well that didn't actually happen that way. Here's what you did. I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally right. I didn't do that. Yeah. Like the story that I talked about when I pranked my siblings with the dogs. It was just my sister who I pranked. I put her dog in the shed, not my brother's dog.
No.
Just my sister. And she reminded me of that. She's like, it was just my dog, not both of them.
Yeah. It has been fun. And even my parents listening to these episodes and going, oh, I wonder what you're going to say.
Yeah, that's my mom. Every time she's like, oh, I'm always like so excited but so nervous every time.
Yes. But it's been great. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this as well. And this is not the end. We're coming back with so much more content. Like we said in part one, we have so many cool ideas for the second season. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. You're going to super enjoy it. But Andrew, in the meantime, how can they contact us?
Yep, absolutely. Well, you can reach out to us either on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can subscribe, follow us. You can leave comments on it. Feel free to share your stories, your interactions, whether it be in public school or homeschooling or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's lots of different people's stories out there. You can also reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, pretty much anywhere where you can follow us. We're there. You can also reach out to us and share your own stories at shelteredsage shelteredsages@gmail.com.
Absolutely. Please do. Please tell us about your experiences, or even if you have questions about homeschool, send them to us. We'll see if we can answer
direct them to our parents, and then they can answer them for us. Yes. Or I actually have a lot of friends who are also currently homeschooling their kids, and so I can talk to them too.
Bring them on. Bring them on. Bring on the questions. Let's go.
But it's one of those things that's like, it's hard just to see that public opinion about homeschooling. And like, I just really hope that, like, as we progress, more people are open to the idea of homeschooling.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's cool. So is there anything else that we're doing right now?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching once again, or listening wherever you are. We appreciate having you here, and I hope that we will see.
Hey, we're almost done. We're like 2 more minutes.
Wait, she's supposed to be at work right now, right?
Oh, crap. Yeah, what is... There's no time to explain.
We're you, but from the future. Okay, that kind of tracks. That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured we'd figure out time travel, but no.
Enough! Both of you, stop talking! This is legitimately serious. There is no time for pickle feet or deviled eggs or any of that crap. The fate of homeschoolers everywhere, their reputation, as well as your podcast hangs in the balance based on what you do next. Wait, I'm sorry. What are you talking about?
You represent thousands of curious minds and Reddit's judgmental chaos. The fate of the world and all homeschoolers depends on what you do next in semester 2.
What?
This is why we brought help.
This holds the key. You're the only ones who can make sense of everything.
This is making no sense whatsoever. It's... Oh, wow. That's kind of brilliant.
Sheltered Sages will return in semester 2.